Hello and welcome to tonight's live stream from the Truth Proof channel. So I've got to welcome everybody from Yorkshire, from the UK and around the world to tonight's live stream. As you know by the card on the card for tonight's show, we've got a great guest on tonight, a prolific UFO book writer and investigator, researcher and historian. But without further ado, I think I'll just have a look in the chat and see who's on the chat tonight and see who's in the stream. Well, Deborah Singleton is moderating for us tonight, so welcome to the show, Debs, and thanks for moderating. We've got Ralph Winter, Joey Hayes, Lee Roscoe, Codes of the Unknown, South Coast Rich, Joe Weeks. Let's have a look. Tino's in, and thanks guys for joining us in tonight's show. I'm just going through some more what's floating by, and I just got to say I hope you've all had a good week, and what a great show last night, by the way, from Chris Turner. Chris Turner's inaugural first show was last night with guest Paul Sinclair, so that was great in itself. I don't know if any of you who was in tonight did see that show, but it was fantastic. So let's have a look. We have Mally Dodgson. Welcome to the show, Mally. Hope you enjoy it tonight. We have also I Film UFOs, Jane Louise Bowery. Welcome, Jane. And Paul Hadley. And that's all I can see at the moment. If I've missed any names, I'm sorry, but we will get to you if you put any questions on the screen for Paul or his guest. So without further ado, if I can get this to work properly tonight, guys, we are... No, I don't think I can. Let's have a look. There we go. We are back. There we go. Start the show. Truth Proof live stream for this Thursday. Welcome to the show, Paul Sinclair and his guest.
Thank you very much, lads, and great to be back again. Another week. It keeps flying around, and as Les said earlier, we've got John Hanson to talk to today, someone I consider a very good friend, absolutely wealth of knowledge, helped me immensely over the years, along with Philip Mantle. John Hanson, what Les said earlier is correct. UFO writer, researcher, and historian. John, welcome to Truth Proof.
Welcome to you, and also a host of stars, people that are getting in touch with us. And obviously, I would like to thank you and Les for allowing me the opportunity. I don't do many podcasts, probably because I'm so involved in the archives, and also that the book that I'm doing at the moment, which is the police books. So yeah, but it's always an honor because you know, I have a special relationship with you, Paul. I got to be careful when you mention things like that, but seriously, we get on well, yeah, and I respect you very much, as most people do, and also Les. So yeah, great.
Well, Johnny, you know, I actually have a good idea what the amount of research that you've done over the years. But do you want to tell us a little bit about your background first, and then how you became involved in the subject and so entrenched? Because people, listen to this. John Hanson does not switch off from this subject. It's 24/7. So let's hear about John Hanson for a few minutes before we get to any cases and things that are avid to you, of interest to you.
Yeah, some people say that it's a passion, other people say it's an obsession. For me, it's probably a bit of each, but I enjoy talking to people and tracing people wherever possible, who have had experiences. And we've discussed this before, where somebody rings you up and they tell you about what they've seen. And I feel sometimes our part is to perhaps, well, obviously, research into it and reassure them and make sure that they're not on their own, because so many people, as I say, get in touch and they feel ostracized sometimes for reporting what they've seen, irrespective of what the irrespective of whatever the reason is. But yeah, that's me. I mean, I was hoping that a Metropolitan Police officer, he said he's going to speak to me today about a sighting that he had in 2016 with a fellow officer, and they were some miles apart, and they shouldn't really have seen the same thing, but they did, and that's something I've come across before. But yeah, when I left the force, everybody will laugh, but when I left the police force, I used to go out digging for bottles. I've done Victorian tips and found them fascinating, digging into the past, because it's surprising what the Victorians threw away. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a book on bottles. And at that time, a police officer well known to me, nearly slipped up there. He contacted me and told me about something that happened in January 1995 in the Birmingham area. And as a result of what he'd seen and others, I tracked down some people all over the country that had seen it. And it was fairly obvious. It wasn't, as the British Astronomical Association told me, was a meteorite or a bolide or Venus or Jupiter or whatever. It was something unexplainable. And that's how I got involved. And
John,
you know,
were you a serving police officer at that time?
I'm sorry, mate. Yeah, I did nearly 30 years in the West Mids, half in CID. And as I say, I quite often say, working nights, I never saw anything unusual. Well, certainly not in the sky. There were lots of unusual things I came across. But yeah, if somebody had said to me, officer, I've seen a flying saucer, a UFO, I thought they were nuts. I'd have thought that they perhaps had too much to drink. But, you know, the truth of the matter is, as you know yourself, in some ways it's quite frightful, because there's untouched depths to what these things are all about. In all honesty, nobody actually really knows what they are. A lot of people have their own belief systems, but all we can do is research, is fly the flag. That's what we're doing, Paul.
Yeah.
And others like us, because all we want is answers, and whether we'll get answers, I doubt it.
Well, but
the subject matter itself fascinates us.
But that's what you're searching for, and what you touched on earlier, John, when you were on about the witness. I mean, I know the lengths you go to speak to the witness and reassure them, and how important, you touched on it a little bit, but how important do you think that is? If it's a case that you're truly believing and you think, yeah, they've seen something that is extraordinary, not necessarily from outer space, because like you've said, we don't know, but how important is it for you that that witness comes away feeling that they're really pleased that they spoke to John Hanson, you know, and shared it?
That is what the job's about. Sorry, it was that. Initially, when I got involved with this, I read all sorts of things that people suggested, that if you'd only got one witness, I'm not sure if it was Dr. Alan Hynek said that, but one witness, it's not very good. But of course, one witness is very important if you get to know them, if you speak to them personally. You know, you can get a fairly good idea of what they are, in the same way that they get an idea of what you're about as well. And I suppose it's instincts, it's the gut instincts, and it's the feeling about people, because they need help. They really do need help to come to terms with what they've seen and experienced. And like you, my heart goes out to them. I mean, I have come across one or two that for me, they're pretty suspect, but I've also come across a lot of other people. I'm sorry, but in this business that, well, let's say that I find particularly their own individual belief systems suspicious, shall we say, because you and I do this because we love it. We don't do it for money. People say, "Oh, you sell books, Paul. You make lots of money," or "I make lots of money." Well, I don't. I never have done. That's not what it's about. It's something I enjoy, and I do have a passion for it. Unfortunately, I never wrote a book about bottles, but who knows? The only bottles I write about is the ones I drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
So
yeah, that's how I got into it.
Do you wanna tell us about a few
Do I want to
cases?
drink?
Well, you probably
Sorry,
want
did
to
you say?
drink. Do you want to tell us about a few cases that you've worked on? And we can touch on Rendlesham in a bit, but some of the less known ones that you think are still as important or as valid.
Well, particularly, there's so many thousands of them, but let me take. I should tell the guys and the gals and people there that are listening that recently Margaret Fry died, and Margaret Fry was involved with the Welsh Federation of Ufologists, but she used to live in Bexleyheath, Kent. In 1955, she had tremendous sighting one evening, and she saw this UFO hovering over the road junction. And some years ago, I was honoured to go back down there with her and take some film of her at the junction and meet other witnesses. And you know, a fascinating thing about this is when you got involved in something like that, when you investigate, there were school children that have seen the UFO, or whatever you want to call it, but certainly a UFO was hovering over the school the previous day. And then I tracked down a police officer who'd heard about this and gone out to have a look for himself and was warned off. And it was a fascinating case. And sadly, Margaret passed away a couple of months ago, which has just reminded me, because I've got to put something in the local newspaper in Abergele and also in Bexleyheath. I just reminded myself, I haven't got around to doing that yet, but she was a lovely woman. There was so many other cases. I mean, I've just got on my screen there, one that's always fascinated me was the July 1947 flying saucer landing in Hereford, where a lady told me what had happened, and I went to the scene and did some investigations, and there's little doubt that something landed and that the police were called, the MOD were called. I mean, I never see any point in reading the stuff. It's like in front of me, I've got The Haunted Skies, Wiltshire, which is a fascinating book. I'm only going to show you because the amount, the colossal amount of its color book of cases that I've investigated and researched, and it was so great to meet people down there in Wiltshire that had, I mean, Pat Delgado springs to mind. What a lovely guy he was. He's passed, friend of Colin Andrews, and early sightings from the late Victorian time, and
Right,
so much.
I'm glad you touched on that, John. Let's stay there for a bit. What's the earliest sightings you've had?
Well, back in time, apart from the prehistoric times.
Well,
I mean,
that far back, have you? I don't think.
Well, we weren't alive then, were we, mate? No, it's the I can't say, ghostly public houses in Leicestershire. Did aliens land at Honey Street, Alton Barnes, Wiltshire? Yeah, it was 37, 38. It was a gentleman. It was the father of Kathleen Marshall. And at the time he lived in Honey Street, which is near the barge, and he went for a walk on his own, and he felt an unusual kind of heat. He sensed there were people in the field, but he couldn't see them. He heard voices, and then he was aware of some kind of crap and a smell coming from it. When he reached home, his mother asked where he'd been, as he was 2 hours late. And it's something that the father, I've got a picture of George, a picture of Kathleen, and Kathleen tells me about her father, and you know, it was something that was on his mind all his life. So whatever people want to try and explain this away, what he experienced was something that was on his mind and unanswered for the rest of his life. And
Isn't that the truth, John? That's the profoundness of the subject. That when we've been touched by it, don't let your camera fall over again, John.
no, it's not often as an ex-copper that I can show you a cup of tea has fallen into the police cap. So I'm just about to put the tea back in the cup, right? And if you think that's a fluke, I'm buggered. But go on anyway.
Yeah, this is only on proof.
You'll keep that in, Les.
Yes, and let me just throw it out to the people listening tonight. Let's have some questions in capital letters for John Hanson. But we haven't got any yet, but we will have. I'm pretty sure of it. So, John, what's the most, or one of the most bizarre cases that you've? They're all bizarre, that UFO related. You touched on hauntings, poltergeist.
Well, I really can't say, mainly because what I say to people is that, and you're quite right when we spoke before, a lot of people don't know me. They don't know I publish the books. They don't know I write the books. You know, and there are thousands of sightings in those books from pilots, Second World War pilots that I've interviewed. They're no longer with us. But for me, it's a matter of pride, going right off the subject here. And I'm not trying to impress, but my ex-father-in-law served on HMS Kelly with Lord Louis Mountbatten. And Lord Louis was quite interested in UFOs. Prince Philip, of course, that was also interested in UFOs. He had all the books off me and sent me many letters, and I regard them with great pride. And the thing is, there's a lot of people in power, you know, that believe in these things, whatever they are. But here we are in this day and age, and the subject matter is still treated with a lot of skepticism and a good dosing of ridicule by the media, isn't it? But as for cases, I suppose I can look at the screen here. Andrew Bryce Cherry from Edinburgh. I think he talked about a close encounter in July 1947, and he saw this craft hovering above the road with these people in it, which reminds me about so many other cases where people have seen what appears to be humanoids in there. When I first got involved in this, I certainly believed in UFOs. I didn't know what they are. I didn't think they were man-made. And so many occasions people said, oh, we thought we saw a humanoid or an alien being. And I thought, I can't believe that. I just can't believe that. And then I met so many people that had seen things. And then I realized, of course, I can't give any answers, but people do see what appears to be humanoid forms in some of these craft. And so, it's for me, it's a never-ending adventure, you know.
I know it is for you, John, and I know from our conversations, but I'm interested. The early reports and the descriptions of the craft, as you call them, have they changed from the 40s to present day? In your opinion, are we looking at the same things?
I think we are. First of all, how would you and I, if we'd been, I don't know, I mean, I know you're not that old, Paul, but if we'd been back in the 1880s, if we'd been walking along and having a beer and something had come over, what would we have said? We couldn't have said, oh, that's a UFO, it's a flying saucer. We'd have said, hey, look at that bloody comet or thing in the sky. What is it?
It's been biblical to some people, wouldn't it?
That's right. And who do we tell? No one's going to believe us. And I'm convinced from some of the sightings of UFOs that go back to the Victorian times and before then, even the Roman times, that we're dealing with the same thing. But of course, it depends also on the visual perspective of these objects. But for me, predominantly throughout all of the UFO sightings, reports, encounters, and interviews with people, is that if you like, for me, the classic thing is number three objects forming a triangle, and three objects which can split up and move away. I often call them UFO displays. So I even was looking at one earlier about a pilot in 1940 that saw the black triangles, and I'm pretty sure we didn't have any covert top secret technology back in the 1940s of black triangles. But so many people say that they're like black triangles, and it fascinates me. I mean, the last thing I ever want to do, and this is probably why I'm a crap talker, is to go through, read through sightings, because
No.
it's not the same as when you're talking about. I mean, I've got a good memory, but it's a fascinating subject. But you've seen a lot over it.
We've seen
Bempton,
a lot
haven't you?
at Bempton, John. Yeah, but just to stay with black triangles, well, I mean, that's brilliant. I'd love to read about that, the 1940s black triangle sighting. But even in 1990s, when they were prolific, as you'll have been researching then and know, why aren't we seeing the results of the if they're ours, if the black triangles are ours, and some people believe that, and I'm in no position to say that they're not ours, but if they are, why aren't we seeing the results of the black triangles now? From 50 years later, or 20, all these years later, and we're not seeing it, are we? They're not settling conflicts. These huge silent objects that can go at incredible speeds. That's the bit that sticks with me. I'm not saying that these things aren't man-made, because I simply don't know. But why aren't we seeing the results of these experimental crafts now? Or do we just keep widening goalposts and are in the bar every time people ask them questions and say, well, this technology were around 50 years ago, we've just not got to it yet? To me, it's a load of bull. I don't think there's something else.
Yeah, I agree with you, because the late Omar Fowler he was from the Surrey investigation group SIGAP. Then he worked for the Derby based was it PRA or something, I remember. But anyway, Phenomenon Research Association. What a smashing bloke! It was many years ago at Gordon Creighton's funeral. But he had an awful number of those. I mean, for argument's sake, if we all get in the room now, the people on the other end as well, I could show you with these books a phenomenal number of sightings of black triangles that took place in 1994, 1995, 1996, up to about 1999. My feeling is that possibly, when I say this, we're told that this started in 47. Maybe it'll start again in 2004 to 2247. Has it got that right? 2047. Yeah. Maybe it starts again then when certain criteria is met, and then it begins all over again. But I don't think you might be here in
I don't have no idea. I might not.
No, you don't. No, you don't know, mate. Do you? You don't know.
Well, jump from triangles for a moment, then. As a former police officer, this what your answer will interest me here, and a lot of other people, and you've probably been asked it before, but anecdotal evidence. That's all we're dealing with. How much of it do you think we have to take in and absorb from the UFO community, from the experience of the abductee, before we actually say, hold on a minute, well, this has to be considered as proof? Or do you think that will never be? Because we're dealing with we're dealing with anecdotal evidence, aren't we, John? We've not really got any
voice. Sorry, go on. So I lost your voice then.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What we're dealing with in most cases, 99.9% of cases, is anecdotal evidence.
Oh, right.
So how much anecdotal evidence do we need before the powers that be or the general public accept that there is a true reality to this? Do you think it'll never be acceptable?
I don't think it'll ever be acceptable, because let's say you had no interest in the subject and you weren't doing what you're doing. If someone came along and spoke to you about this, you'd probably dismiss it, because we're not brought up on UFOs, flying saucers, or whatever. We're not brought up being taught about phenomena that occur in this world. there isn't a school curriculum, is there? About, I mean, look at the Project Blue Book. Look at the massive amount of sightings there. I went through a lot of Project Blue Book stuff a few years ago, and what impressed me more than anything was the fact that on each case there was a card index, and the card at the top put brief details and explained it away as the Venus or the moon or whatever. But when you look through the witness statements, the written witness statements, they were not describing a moon or a planet. Sometimes they were describing something triangular. So, you know, we all want answers, it's very frustrating, isn't it? I think for everybody in this neck of the woods, if you like.
Do you think then that the official explanation, Venus, swamp gas, meteorites, weather balloons, do you think the general public just absorbed that, and because they never actually got down to look at the witness statements like you did, they just sort of took on board, oh, well, this has been said, this has been explained by officialdom, and therefore it has to be? Do you think that's just...
Well, it's easy to accept it like that, isn't it? Because, as I mentioned before I got involved in this, I thought flying saucers were something of the 20th century, like, I don't know, like every other crazy thing. I thought these things could not exist, because you've got to. The problem is it's the media, isn't it?
Yeah.
The media always takes the pee out of people, even coppers, you know, about what they've seen. That's amazed me over the years. You, as a journalist, and I was brought up thinking that journalists wanted to get at the truth. Well, that's no way. But so many sightings. I mean, if you were a journalist and they told you about something at Bempton, it happened last week, you might actually think, well, let me check what happened the week before, the month before. Let's find out what was seen before. And you'd put a case together, because I know you would. The journalists wouldn't bother. They just want to put something in and just take the mickey.
Yeah.
Because they're not believers. And
without naming any names, then, John, and sort of going down that road, I take it you've had some bad experience with journalists and the work that you're doing with the Haunted Skies books.
Well, generally speaking, I've looked at thousands of sightings. I've looked at thousands of press cuttings. And over the years, it's easy, isn't it? Oh, come on, if somebody writes up something, and if somebody sees a flying saucer and they contact the press need a banner-grabbing headline, don't they?
Yeah.
And it'll come up with it, and then it'll, in a way, ridicules the the sighting itself. And then people, you know yourself, I think people that come forward, they've got great courage in talking to us, because a lot of people don't come forward.
Well, that's correct. And then you've got the researchers who aren't like you and me, and they'll get something that they consider an incredible case, and they'll get the witness to talk to them. And what do? They'll go straight to paper with it and get a bit of glory for themselves, rather than sort of put the witness in a brilliant light. And we've seen that happen before, and that's totally unfair. And
that's how it works. But that's how it works, doesn't it? I mean, we've had these conversations before. For me personally, having lived through it, as it were, 26 years, and I'm not a great attender of conferences. I'm sorry, because for me, it's fairly obvious that a lot of people, they utilize the sightings to make money, and I'm not knocking them for that, but it's not my cup of tea, and it's not your cup of tea either. I mean, I just enjoy researching, putting the stuff together, putting the books about. And the thing is, with the books, they're not about me. The books are about people, and the photographs are about people, and a lot of illustrations that you have to pay for, they're about what these people have seen. And in a way, we're preserving a bit of social history, because UFOs are social history.
We've got
Sorry.
loads. We've got a fair bit to go yet, but we touched on social history. We've touched on the historian part of it. Tell people about the archive.
Well, the archive, yeah, I'm looking at it now. I've sent you a couple of pictures and I've been working on it today. The top layer of 85 A4 arch lever files, all colored blue with stickers on the front. That's cost a bit of money. They covered from probably 1940 to 1993. And then the bottom layer which should be finished in the next month or so. And it is quite frightening to look through, specifically if you want to look at a date. We talked about flying triangles, 95, 96. And a lot of stuff came from Ron West to the East Anglia UFO Paranormal group that he, I think in 1992, Brenda Butler joined up with him. And the amount of stuff is phenomenal. But this is about our citizens. This is about people like you and me that have got up in the middle of the night, you know, sort of not being able to sleep, open the curtains, and then seen this bloody thing hovering over the garden and then shooting off. And a lot of people don't bother telling the police. But when you do report it to the police, or you report it to the MOD, well, we all know what the MOD gives us, bugger all, doesn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So before we leave the archive, where can people look at this?
Well, you know, people have already been in touch with me, and they think I'm going to sit on my backside for the next 6 months and digitize it all. But bear in mind, a lot of stuff like you, I've got on my computer, photographs, people, reports. But this would take me probably 18 months to put all together and then float off the paper. I'm not going to do it. If there's nothing like, at the end of the day, and it's all protected, is come in here and look in specific. You want to look through 65 or 66 or 95 or 96. If you want to know what's in there, come and have a look. I ain't charging nothing. You know, they can make the tea, but come along and have a look. And if you want to, if you say to me, can you photostat 20 pages or something and send it to them, I'll do it. So, you know, I'm not in it to make money.
I know that, John. So you're quite happy for me to say that if anybody wanted to contact you after the live stream or get your email address and were interested in looking at the archive, that you would invite
them.
They're
welcome. Yeah, they're welcome. Yeah. If it helps spread the word, which is what it's about. And a lot of these people, you know, they're not necessarily around anymore. And particularly, to say, some of the pilots. You know, I always remember Air Commodore Michael Swinney. I think David Clark interviewed him before me, but I went down to see him. And I think, if I remember rightfully, he reported a sighting. Can't honestly remember what sighting it was, but he reported a UFO sighting. And he submitted his report to the MOD, and they promptly lost it. They said they destroyed it. Now, when he left the job and then joined the MOD as one of the guys in charge. Surprise, surprise. You found it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And so that's how it goes. But on the way out, he said to me, I can never forget, he said to me, can I offer you the hospitality of the house? And I thought he meant a rum and coke or something. I said, a drink. He said, no. He said, if you want to use the toilet. So I said, no, I'm fine, thanks. And but you remember things like that. And I met so many really smashing people over the years that.
Well, you know, and John, an Air Commodore reporting a sighting, a man of that stature, and getting lost, and then he hangs on to, like you've just said, these things that happen are so profound that they stay with people for the rest of their lives. And this guy, the amount of protocol he will have gone through and censorship with the position he were in, and yet he still changes his job afterwards, and he still changes his job afterwards. And throw me now. And come on,
You said we should. This should be a fireside chat, and it always is.
And
It's relaxed. It's
let's
how
ask
we
Les-
are.
Let's ask Les if he's got any questions.
Wow, I can't stop laughing myself here, guys.
Let's go,
And
John. Thank you.
yeah, right then, I've got some questions. We've got some great questions in tonight, and a little bit of out of order because I just want to stay on with what we've touched on, really. So let's have a look then. It's about your archives from AXC, John. Gents, so much is lost when partners and families chuck that rubbish out, in inverted commas. Have you left specific instructions about what should happen to your archives when you're gone?
Well, that is, we discussed this so many times. Number one, any archives or documentary material, if it's preserved properly, which this is, should be kept in this country. We agree on that, don't we, Paul? It
100%.
should not float off somewhere else on foreign shores. And I think, as I say, I'm not sure. I haven't delegated anybody yet. But if anything happened to me, I'd make bloody sure Paul had it or somebody else. So, because again, I know through dealings before, many people over the years have kept comprehensive archives. One guy springs to mind, Peter Johnson, a UFO researcher of the 70s. All of his stuff just disappeared, and then there was Cheltenham-based researcher. He had something like over 1 million cuttings, and of course, when he passed away, good old landfill did very well. And it's ridiculous, isn't it? Because this is our social history. And it should be preserved, but maybe a library will. The only trouble if it goes into a library, it's I don't know. Is the library the best place, Paul?
Do you know, John? I'm not sure it is. I had some historic maps. They were they were quite valuable. Very old maps on parchment, and I'd been given them because they showed certain things about Flixton and other areas. Yeah. And the library, Bridlington Library, has been very good to me and allowed me to use archive and get myself immersed in it. But I gave them to the library, but I've never seen them since. I don't know. They should have been put in glass cases. They were that good, and I really regret getting rid of them. So do some of this important stuff. Would they put John Hanson's archive in a library on display or with access for everybody to use? I don't know whether they would, or would it be just locked away in some dusty cupboard when somebody like myself might ask if they could look at it? Is that what you'd want? Or would, do you know what I would want as well? Because we sound like we're talking as though you've passed away and I've passed away here, John. And
maybe we have.
Yeah,
maybe we have.
No, I don't know if library would be the best place for such work. And I've got piles and piles of information. Not as much as you, but I've spent a lot of time in archives like yourself. And I don't think people appreciate that every copy that you print off is 50 or 60p. It don't sound like
right.
But if you come away with 20 pages because you've been sat there getting your information, it soon adds up. Right, let's fire away. Have we another question?
Yeah, I've got plenty of questions to go through, and I'm going to try my very best tonight to get through as many as I can. So bear with me on this one. And Patricia Adams Wright is asked, welcome to the show, Patricia. John, do you think there is a different attitude in the police force these days? Thanks. I think she's probably referring maybe to UFO reports.
Yeah, I reckon to the subject. Yeah, I'm certain that's what you mean. Yeah.
I don't think there is, no. What I will say is that it's probably the right opportunity. I'd always wanted to write a book about police, probably because it was a cop myself. And I am writing, it's going to be 2 books now, because what I've done with the police book, and I sent you a copy of the front cover, is that for the first time, as far as I know, my co-author, we would call him a bit of a newbie, but he's a police inspector, and he has actually served in Northern Ireland. I mean, it's only a young bloke, served in Northern Ireland and also abroad as a soldier. So let's say that he's probably, I don't blame him doing this, but it's Inspector T, Roy T, and you'll actually find him on the internet as there was a case some years ago when he tried to arrest somebody, and they drove the vehicle at him, and he landed on the bonnet. He was taken for some, I don't know, half a mile, and man, he's lucky to escape not being killed, and arrested the guy. That's on the internet anyway. He's still there, but he's involved with me, and he's tracking a lot of people down. And he's put something in the National Association of Retired Police Officers, which in 2003, I made an appeal in there, and I got quite a few coppers to come forward and tell me about all sorts of things they'd see. But yeah, I'm sort of digressing a bit here, but talking about coppers, I think it's the same as it's always been, you know. But if you get enough police officers, if you get police officers that are willing to come forward, and I have a lot here. I mean, the Flying Cross of 1967, October 67, they tried to write that off as the officers had been chasing Venus or Jupiter or whatever it was. But when you look, like most things, if you look at how many of the sightings took place around that 24-hour period, involving lots of police and lots of people in the Devon and Cornwall area, well, clearly it can't be. It's during the daytime. It can't be a planet. So, like me, you accrue all the evidence before you can form an opinion. And I think somebody sent me a link today about the 1971 Enstone a film crew Enstone 1971, when they were doing a farming program, and the thing appeared in the sky. They filmed it, and eventually most people accept the official explanation that it was a United States Air Force plane refueling. When you have a look at it and you interview the cameraman, you interview the people there, and you go around and see some of the witnesses, well, it wasn't bloody that, you know. So
which is
a lot of it is
just to stay with the police book that you're on with. Just for a moment, remind me next day or so, because you said the Flying Cross, and I've actually got I've supplied you with a couple of accounts, but I've got another one that's just come to mind, and it's a Flying Cross. Believe it or not, it's a retired police officer. So I will speak to you about that from a place called Burton Fleming tomorrow, John. And I feel quite honoured that you did ask me if I wanted to get involved in that book when you first onset of it, but it would have been unfair, because I would have just been latching on to John Hanson, because all that information is John Hanson. No, it's yours, John. Do you know? What? So I couldn't have done it, because everything primarily is your work. And I'm looking forward to seeing this book and reading this book when it comes to fruition.
Well, so there will be two books. Yeah.
Have you got a name for the book? Has it got a title?
Blue Light Files. Well, I sent you a copy of the cover.
Yeah.
It's Les. Did you get that, Les? Or okay, yeah. Actually, Paul, while we're on, what I need to do, I'm thinking, mate, that for the second book, which covers, I don't know, it covers Yorkshire, Lancashire, the other half of the alphabet were the police authorities. Before a lot of them amalgamate. But what when I say we need, what we need is something like, I've got at least 2 or 3 sightings. The one over at London, which comes under the Metropolitan Police, of course, Humphrey Bishop. He was an observer on India 99, the police helicopter, report of an armed robbery over at near the airport, Heathrow. And he was in the helicopter, and they saw this thing below him, this sausage-shaped object weaving and moving and ducking down onto the ground. And when he arrived back at the police station, he made a full report, and the superintendent told him, put it in the bin. You were chasing a model plane, a toy helicopter, whatever crap it was he came up with. And then Humphrey tells me, and I didn't get a photograph of Humphrey, mate. I didn't get a photograph of him. Humphrey says the next day he was told to go to Croydon and meet with some MOD officials. And they interviewed him rigorously about this. And on the way out, he said, well, what one of them was in army uniform. He said, what was it then? They said, it's an expression I find very difficult. I'm not sure what it means, but like it was something from the mothership, you know. That's what they said to him. Yeah.
That was their explanation to him.
Well, that's what they said to him. Yeah. But like I say, I'm thinking for the second book, I'm not going to put the same image on the front. I'm going to put something like a helicopter, 2 or 3 helicopter, one from Southend-on-Sea. In fact, I spoke to Claire today. She was back in '95. She was there. She took some film of the object. She contacted the police. There were at least 7 police officers that came to the house. Of course, they all started to take mickey and saw over Southend Airport what this thing was moving about. They scrambled the helicopter. The helicopter couldn't see it, and as I say, I spoke to her today. I'm going to get trying to get a bit more information, but she's been fantastic. And then there was talking about another one, another case involved a lady called Zena. And Zena was ultimately interviewed by a senior police officer who just took the mickey out of her on TV. And that was at least 10 officers that came and saw this thing. But fascinating, you know.
So Zena's not a member of the public. Zena's a police officer.
No, Zena called them, you see, right. And they all came. And it's all written in that's obviously in the book.
What does she say?
Well, a source said, no, she saw a cone-shaped object. She took some film of it. I've got the original, the drawing from her, the witness statement. But I mean, that's going back some years, even for me now.
Yeah.
But it's great that you can still contact people.
But isn't it amazing, John, that these historic accounts? I just think there's just as much relevance to them if they've never been heard before, or the historic cases, if we can find new information to pack around them. But do you want to add any more to police book, or shall we move on to another question?
Well, what I'm going to do as well is I'm like most things, as you know yourself, when you look at something superficial, there isn't a lot to it. But when you start getting your backside out the chair and you start doing some investigations and inquiries, it slowly builds up, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Packing all the meat around it, yeah.
And then you start to struggle because it's too much. But I say there'll be 2 books plus a third, which will be foreign police officers. Now that's not going to be so easy, but I have all the information, but tracking down officers, you know, from in the States, which is not.
I take it you feel it's important then, and I do as well, that in as many instances as possible, you've got to get as close to the source, the first-hand witness as possible.
Well, yeah, that's how it works, doesn't it?
Yeah. And because so many people, it's a friend of a friend told me this, and there might be a bit of truth attached to it, and they said they've seen this, and it's like Chinese whispers. Then a ball of light in the sky just grows to be a mothership, as the word that you used earlier. But
well, it's funny, isn't it? But as you know yourself, it makes me laugh is that some people categorize UFOs, and one of the common things is lit, which is light in the sky. Well, lit, that means that, does that mean it can be explained as anything like laser lights? It could be anything, flares. But you see, it's all right to say that, but the amount of sightings I've got of what I categorized as UFO displays, where people will see hundreds of objects above in the sky moving backwards and forwards, upwards and downwards, moving off over the horizon and coming back. And sometimes you see what they refer to as a structured object. So those UFO displays, I suppose you could say they're lights in the sky, but by Christ, they're quite serious things. Anything that like that is serious. And I always say to people that the UFOs is like Pandora's box. That if you could really open the Pandora's box and look inside, you might wish you hadn't bothered.
Yeah.
Because this is far. I think you'd agree with me, Paul. It is serious stuff, isn't it?
It really is, and it's far deeper than anybody. It's far deeper than that surface ridicule that we get from most people.
Yeah.
But jumping from that, let's see whether Les has got any more questions here. John, have you any, Les?
Yes, I've got a question from Samora. Probably pronounced it wrong. I'm sorry if I have. Has Paul? It's a question for Paul, John. So, yeah. Has Paul done any research on EVP? If so, what are your thoughts? Have you had any good results, or do you think there's a scientific explanation? Keep up the good work, everyone.
Well, first of all, there could be a scientific. Well, there will be a scientific explanation, be it of this world or of somewhere else. That's without doubt. But I haven't got it. But EVP, not a great deal. No, there's a guy, a friend of mine, Peter Masters, who's somewhat of an electronics expert, and we plan doing. And Les is going to be involved in this. I don't know if he knows it yet, but we plan on doing a lot of experiments with Peter due to his background and his knowledge, radio signals and different things, and EVP will come into it. As far as I'm concerned, my only little jaunt into it was with Steve Ashbridge, and we took Olympus digital recorders onto the cliff tops, and we asked questions on a still night and just left them rolling. We've not, and you know, is this happening? Has that happened? And we definitely got a voice that we never heard, but the recorder picked up, and it said one word. If Steve's listening to this, I'm sure he'd jump in, and it said kill. We asked if we were safe up here, and it said kill. That was the word that we heard. That was the word that we got on the recorder. I didn't say it. He didn't say it. We were sat in front of the old RAF base, not in the grounds of the base. Sat in front of it. So that's the only thing I've got. I don't know whether you've got any knowledge of EVP, John, or have you?
Well, not really. I've obviously been in Rendlesham Forest when there's guys down there been recording stuff on what they call the ghost boxes and things. And all I will say is that that's something I'm certainly know very little about. But what I do know, or I sense, is that certainly from a number of photographs I've looked at and research and talking to people who've lost loved ones, I certainly get an impression that you know, and that certainly that death is not the end of life. And that our energies go somewhere else, because I've seen enough photographs of very strange anomalies. And for me, the one, and I've never published it because it I could not do it, but it was a lady that contacted me, and she'd been to hospital to look at a daughter, a baby that had passed away through hospital neglect, she told me. And she sent the picture, photographed the baby, and coming out of the head were twin spirals of energy. As people could say, well, maybe it's a reflection, maybe it is, maybe that. But the lady was convinced it was something, this was 48 hours later, something either coming out or going in. But when you see a number of other photographs like that, and I've seen some very strange things in Rendlesham Forest, and I was certainly not a believer in the sort of stuff down there to begin with. So maybe, you know, this particular sphere of existence is one of many.
So
you know,
let's just stay. We'll get to Les in a minute and ask him for another question. But let's just stay with Rendlesham for a minute. The photographs. You'll have seen lots of photographs over the years with research that you've done in Rendlesham and about Rendlesham. But are we talking about Brenda Butler's photographs or other people?
Other people's photographs. I mean, some of the, I mean, David Bryant has taken from Norwich, is Smashing Bloke David. He's taken some very strange things, him and Linda down there, and in the forest that shouldn't be there, and some of them look humanoid. When I say they look humanoid, that's our conception, isn't they? Look humanoid. But I don't know.
Is it pareidolia? What's appearing on the picture, John? And I do realise that I'm putting you on spot because we haven't got one to look at, but do we appear to be looking at some really strange, misty
Well, we seem
animal?
to be looking at something that is. I mean, how come so many people see, if you like, they call them aliens and refer to them as humanoids or whatever, have a head, have a body, have legs, a torso, and sometimes people say they've got 3 fingers instead of 5 or whatever. But in a way, they emulate the human being, don't they? They're not that far removed.
No.
But there's some really weird stuff in the forest. But as I mentioned before, when I first went down there, I smiled inwardly because people used to talk about these orbs running along the track. And I thought to myself, I've not seen any orbs running along the track. People must be imagining it.
John,
but then
John,
I saw the orb.
What is the track first? What is the track?
Oh, sorry, the trackways. You know, the paths. You know, the different tracks that lead by the side of the air base. I mean, the Forestry Commission have changed the numbers over the years. But yeah, leading down to Capel Green. The tracks, and I've seen some pretty very mysterious stuff, and yeah, as I say, and then a lady said to me, "Can you see them, John?" And I said, "Well, you see an orb?" She said, "Yes, look at it," and bugger me in front of me about a foot off the ground was a white globe of light, was bits coming off it, and it was hovering above the floor, the ground, and somebody took photographs of it. And for me, I don't. The trouble is, I don't know. I don't know what these things are. But when people try and explain, sorry, when people try and
sorry, John, go on.
No, I'm just saying when people try and explain away orbs as being dust bunnies or problems with the camera. I just don't know, but I've seen some. What I've seen down Rendlesham, particularly with the hot stones as well, I've never experienced anywhere else.
We're going to get to the stones in a moment, but let's just stay with the orbs because you've just talked about people saying it's an artifact camera, it's dust.
Yeah,
but we're not talking about that. You saw that with the naked eye. I'm assuming.
I did, yeah.
So what do you make of it then? You've seen it naked eye. We are looking at something different. We're not looking at some military technology. They're not going to send a white glowing orb to look at John Hanson, are they? On a defunct military base. No. It's not. What do you make of it and the people with your group of people that are there?
Well, I mean, I've got thousands of the photos here. A lot of them are Brenda's, but Brenda has a propensity to take far more than anyone else. And a lot of the orbs she takes have got striations in them. They've got marks. They've got things that you wouldn't normally see on an orb anyway. And I've been there with her when she's taken them, and yeah. The thing is, we can't make that giant leap with so many different types of phenomena. We just don't know, do we? I mean, whereas I mean, are we really that different from people thousands of years ago that saw things in the sky?
No.
Have we progressed? We haven't, have we?
No, we might think we have, but I bet they were still asking the same questions with a different vocabulary.
Exactly, yeah.
They were still searching, and that you're asking today, and I'm asking. But so let's stay, if you don't mind, let's stay with Rendlesham for a bit. Let's just move to a lady I've got a lot of respect for, Brenda Butler, and I'm sure you have, John.
Yeah.
And the research around the Rendlesham Forest incident? Do you want to touch on any of that?
Around the Rendlesham Forest?
Yeah, and
Well,
her involvement in it. Who brought it to fruition? Who brought the story to fruition?
Well, it was one of Brenda's contacts, wasn't it? She and Chris Pennington are apart at the time. Chris was a musician, and they used to go around the American Air Base and socialize, have a beer, do a bit of music, and they met a security guy called Steve Roberts. Well, that's not his real name anyway, but Steve Roberts originally contacted Brenda Butler, and he showed a picture of, I think, on a cigarette pack of a flying saucer or a UFO, and he said that aliens had been seen in the forest, and that sparked it all off. And over the years, he's changed his mind and said it was a hoax. But as years go by, I don't know what to make of people, and they keep chopping and changing. But it is definitely, and of course, then I got to know Colonel Holt. And I've been able to see Colonel Holt in the States 2 or 3 times. And, you know, like anybody in this business, there are people out there will attack you because sometimes through jealousy, sometimes because they'd rather practice or they'd rather preach different things. And but, you know, to say I found him a smashing bloke, he was the one that got the memo out. He saw, I think, 3 objects, and then he saw 5 objects, and then I know. Well, I think you said, or somebody said, the whole thing's toxic. Well, it is toxic because there's so many people change their bloody minds. But as I say, all I wanted to do was I ghost wrote the book for Colonel Holt. Everything I put through to him, he agreed, or he added something on. That's the Holt Perspective 2. It's one of the hardest books I've ever done. And I also felt that, you know, if people attack you, you have every right to respond. I mean, like you don't go and attack people. I don't attack people. But some people do because they disagree with what you say. And it's unfortunately, sometimes they're pretty crude and rude and slag you off. And if people do that, well, I'm sorry, but we have the right to respond as in a democracy. So that's what I've done with the Holt Perspective 2. And it really sold a lot of copies, as much as I know. But yeah, I did Holt Perspective.
Well, you're probably as close to Colonel Holt as regards the source and the story as anyone's ever been writing those books. And I mean, people, even if you don't buy the book, it's that thick. It's a huge volume of work, the Holt Perspective, and I know how much work you've put into it, John. But from all the interviews that, and not call them interviews because I think these are just friendly discussions that you've had with Colonel Holt, has his story changed in any way, or has it remained the same?
Not at all. His story's always been exactly the same. I mean, you are talking about a guy that was only there for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then he rose to have one of the most senior positions at Washington, in charge of all the armed forces. Now, that's really should have been a general's job, not a colonel's. So there is a myth.
Let's jump back a moment then, John, because I think this is important because you know this, and I've got a vague idea of what happened. So after Holt reported the incident in Rendlesham, his rank didn't alter at all after that, did it? But he then
it was lieutenant colonel. He was lieutenant colonel. He was then promoted to colonel afterwards. But you know, when I look at the people involved in it, I'm not going to mention any, but there are so many that have had. So many people change their minds, they've changed their stories. I don't know what to make. All I can say is that Colonel Holt was always kept to his story. Some people say he's hiding something. Some people say is this, is that. I don't know. I can only, at least I've recorded. I've met him. I've spent time with him, and he's introduced me to some people, and he's a hell of a nice guy. And
well, through yourself, I've met him a few times, and
well, you
I've
make
found
it,
him to be a really gracious
yeah,
person to be
but
around. But his position, what happened to him after he left Rendlesham? Where did he work? I'm interested.
well, he went
I want
on to
people
another.
to know.
He went to Belgium, did he? As a colonel, he was in charge of an air base there, and I know he doesn't talk a lot about it, but he was involved in the recovery of pilots' bodies and aircraft, and even as a base commander. And there's a lot that he was. I mean, as I say, I've got so much information.
Yeah. Now, did he work at the Pentagon after that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for somebody who's come out with such a story that's been discredited, he's still had an elevated career after that, didn't he?
Well, I say, and also Colonel Holt is been involved with the Boy Scouts right up to the present day. But I think he was over here in Sutton Coldfield in 1953 as a Boy Scout. Came over to England, and I mean, by rights, Colonel Holt should never have joined the United States Air Force. He was a brilliant chemist. He was a fantastic chemist. It's just how things happened. There weren't any jobs for chemists at Pittsburgh where he lived, and Colonel Holt, he came from quite a poor family. I'm talking about a guy that had holes in his shoes and bits of cardboard, and I think maybe in my life I might have done that once. Got a hole in a shoe and put a bit of cardboard in it. I know you would never done that.
Well, you're joking, aren't you? But
yeah, but he was from a normal family in Pittsburgh, and he wasn't from a wealthy family, but he's done well. And at the end of the day, all I'm saying about the UFO business is that if you have a problem, Paul, you ring me up, and we sort it out. We discuss it. But it's so easy to snipe and have a go. Isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't want to lay heavy about your friendship with Colonel Holt or ask you to say anything that you wouldn't want to say. But there's probably nobody got under the guy's skin and got to know him better than you, John. And how has the sighting, the Rendlesham Forest incident, and we've agreed throughout the conversation that these things have a profound effect on the individual. Has it had that profound effect on Colonel Holt, or is it just a sighting? Is it really?
Well, I'd say it hasn't had a profound effect on him. He doesn't. He has a huge, by the way, has a huge file. He's kept everything, at his home in Washington, and he also has a weekend retreat in West Virginia. But yeah, he just deals with it. It's not the be all and end all to it.
No, that's
all.
Yeah.
No,
so, I mean,
not at all.
And you would, to me, it's an incredible experience. And when you hear the recording, it sounds incredible. But I mean, the guy, I told you, he wrote to me with his own big cat sighting of a Black Panther. Do you know, in an area where these things aren't purportedly existed, and that's quite incredible that he's willing to say these things in the face of, we won't say ridicule, because there's not many people know that he's had this sighting, but he's been good enough to tell me. He didn't say keep it a secret, but he will put his neck on the line. If he believes something and he's seen it, he's going to say it. And just the cat sighting, to me, I don't think he'd ever told anyone else. And he's wrote to me about it, which I'm really grateful. But he's there, he's put it online, he's stamped it. I've had that. That could kind of tarnish other things that he says he's seen, and if anybody wanted to make a big thing of it. After listening to the guy talk, after speaking to him myself, I think that this is one of the most credible witnesses within that sighting.
Yeah, and he's very down to earth. In fact, a lot of people won't realise this, but he's quite a shy bloke. Now that might sound very odd, and he's very shy. And normally, when you're with him on your own, you're struggling to make conversation unless you talk about his dog Caesar. And he normally gets the first thing in the morning, takes the dog around the block. But of course, if he has a couple of beers, he's all right. But to say
Aren't we
he's
all?
not, to put it bluntly, he's not a bullshitter.
No.
He is, and you've met him. You know, he's a nice guy. He's got
Yeah.
no airs and graces. Not at all. Not at all. He is what he is, and
Right. Well, I
you
won't.
know,
I will pressure a little bit more because we're going to do the hot stones, unless Les has got a question for us, and then we'll do the stones in a moment. But Les,
Yeah.
thank
Really,
you, John.
yeah,
Enjoying
yeah.
it.
Thanks, John. Really enjoying the show so far, and I'm sure everybody on the chat's enjoying the show. Well, I hope they are. We've got a good question from Dean Coolin. Welcome to the show, Dean. And the question is, what's the scariest, darkest case of abduction, or dare I say, mutilatation?
Yeah, we don't say the word, John, because we got punished the other week for saying the word.
MUT.
Yeah, just animal,
Just
It's an animal.
animal
Well-
fatalities. Well, let's just say that.
So,
Well,
what's the darkest, scariest case you have seen, John and Paul?
John,
Well, you only have to go on the internet, look at Newquay Zoo. Newquay Zoo. There is. I've just written up about that, thanks to a gentleman that researched it many years ago, and there are some newspaper reports, very difficult to get hold of them, relating to a number of, shall we say, attacks on animals at the zoo. I know Phil Hoyle, I know David Clayton, and so do you all, and I have no reason to disbelieve that certainly a phenomenon exists where whatever it is and whoever it is, and we just don't know, but can cause things. It can cause kill animals and disrupt their life, for want of a bird. I'm being careful what I say here, because the evidence shows that. And as I say, Phil Hall's been on TV, and so has David Caton, and Phil's given me some bits and pieces about that. But the Newquay Zoo was probably one of the worst I'd actually come across. But I often wonder, you know, if that can happen to animals, can it happen to us? And if people
make a brilliant point, John. You know, and we are being really careful with words here, people. It's not some kind of gimmick. We really did get punished for talking about these things.
Yeah.
But as you know, Tony Dodd looked into this in the late 1990s in the forests the forests in close proximity to where we're filming Wolflands. And that's why we touched on it. And we've done a little number on Tony Dodd within Wolflands, with full respect to Tony. And I think you're right. I mean, what this intelligence that's interacting with us, the more hostile parts of the intelligence, should we say, of the phenomena, why would it differentiate between a sheep, a cow, or us? It probably wouldn't.
Right. Well, it wouldn't, would it? It's probably because whatever it does and wherever it does it is probably out in the sticks, right out in the sticks. And animals are easy game, aren't they?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, we could be, John. You know, I mean, whatever it is that's interacting, and I've said this before, and I know you probably think on the same lines. It might look upon us and our intelligence no more than we might be no more interested than a blade of grass. We don't know what they're looking at and what their motives are, do we? And it's just never ending, this unrelenting search, and the things that we're digging up, the stones that we're lifting, and this animal fatality thing. I think we're animals. I think it just leaks over to us as well in many instances. I'm really finding it difficult to talk about this because I want to, but we got punished. So I'm struggling to
Can I just fit another question in, guys?
do it. Yeah. And
Yeah, Steve Lewis is asking, John, have you ever seen anything up in Cannock Chase?
So, have you seen anything in Cannock Chase?
yeah,
Yes.
or any report
Well,
from.
I do know. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Not me personally, but I have some sightings from well, not only giant. I'm sure I got I'm just trying to remember, but this guy was a postman, and he contacted me some years ago, and he'd seen some strange figures and also some what he said was giant cats. I'd have to have a look. But Cannock Chase, of course, is a place that I've been to in the past, and there's some very, very strange things happening in Cannock Chase, but you could say there's a lot of strange things happening all over the place. And really, if somebody came up to me and they said they wanted to get involved in this subject, I'm not sure what I would say, to be honest, because this isn't about friendly little aliens and helping us out here and there and ET cycling around the moon. This is serious stuff, and I
Just,
think you've got to,
you touched on
you know what
that
I'm saying,
earlier, and
Paul?
this is serious stuff. We met at the Chris Evers Outer Limit conference a few years ago, and
Yeah,
I'll say the researcher's name because I've got no axe to grind and I've got lots of respect for her. But Mary Rodwell were there, and
who was?
Mary Rodwell,
Yeah,
and we both her talk, her outlook on this is that everything is perfect, in my opinion, love and light, and it's all wonderful, and the visitors are absolutely brilliant. And that's never been my experience. And with all the research you've
no,
done, I'm not saying that there
right.
isn't good elements to this, but all the research you've done, it points to a darker side to the phenomena as well. I think in some instances, doesn't it, John?
It does, and it's a catch-22 situation where whatever it is out there, I respect in as much that I've got a clue what I'm dealing with. Nobody does. If it wanted to be hostile, it could be and probably has. And it's again, it's something that I mean, I've come across a lot of paranormal incidents that have happened as a result of the UFO site. Paranormal incidents frighten me to bloody death. I've got to say, because you're dealing with the real unknown, and I certainly believe that paranormal phenomena could be linked with UFO phenomena. I
I'm
mean,
glad
who
you said
knows if it's the same sort of stuff? Again, I say it so many times, I don't know. But you can't get involved in this without feeling. Well, you have to be careful. You do, because there are some powerful influences out there,
that.
and it's something we don't understand.
Do you
You know,
think?
we
Do you
should
think,
do.
John? Do you think, John, that the witnesses, somebody who's seen something incredible, be it paranormal, be it the UFO, do they then go on and see more? Do you think their minds opened up, or they've touched something and it wants to touch back, and there's a connection?
Well, my feeling is that if you get close enough to these things, uh, even something passing overhead, if you get a clout, for want of a better word, of UFO energy, yeah, the electromagnetic fields, if you get a clout of that, all sorts of things can start happening. I've come across so many cases where clocks malfunction, both electrical and mechanical, and figures are seen. I've got to say that it'll come to you in a minute, but Tom, somebody, it'll come to you in a minute. A guy that I've been in touch with recently, he's from, used to spend a lot of time in Wiltshire. He was living in Warminster, and very clever lad. He built a device made of copper, like a globe, and he he thought that he could attract the energies with that. And he went out into a crop circle and nothing happened. Trowbridge, Thomas Trowbridge. And when, a lovely guy, met him personally. When he took this thing home, 12 o'clock at night, shadows appeared, things appeared, frightening stuff. So he broke it up. So,
but John, what do you think to this then? I don't mean that I know, but what I think after listening to that is concentrated energy that is poured into that's connected with the outside source.
It could be, yeah. You're right. You're right.
Not the device. The device is just something to pour the energy in.
Something mechanical, isn't it? But it's the energy. Yeah.
If we're religious, then the cross is the focal point of the energy, and then we receive the experience. Is that what's happening? So necessarily, it's just not the object. It's just the actual. We need something to focus on to enhance the experience, to connect with this outer nowhere.
Well, that's right. Connection is the word. You're connecting with something that you've got to be very careful about connecting with, because it might not be what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So that's why you've got to be so careful. But of course, if we didn't bother with all of this because we were frightened, well then, it's not us, is it?
No, we've got to keep looking. We've got to keep searching and lifting them
because
stones.
we all want answers, don't we? And one of these days we want the subject matter of UFOs to be treated with respectability.
Yeah.
Obviously there are people in the scientific community over the years, they're not stupid. They obviously realize that something is amiss because the amount of sightings, and they must have concluded an opinion or reached a conclusion about what these things are. But we will not be privy to that, will we?
I don't think so, John. So before we ask Les for more questions, let's jump to these hot stones.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, I know that you've got a bit of knowledge of them.
I'm going to stop. You're going to stop like I'm getting cramp in the head now.
They're hot. Don't do that. And
no, you did that.
So first of all, explain the phenomena and explain where these things were appearing, please.
Well, as I say, I can't rate Brenda Butler enough. A lovely lady. Brenda had a stroke, it must be like last year or something now, but she is unable to drive down to the forest. But she has a companion called Bernie. I think Bernie Hunt's birthday was today, so I wish him happy birthday, because he is without doubt one of the. You never met him. I think you have met Bernie.
I've not met him, but I've spoken to him. He's a wonderful guy, as is Brenda, a wonderful lady.
I can tell you, without giving secrets away, he's one of the nicest men I've ever met, and he well, let's say that he thinks the world of Brenda, and and the two of them are brilliant. But I've been down in the forest with Brenda, and the stones, crikey, you just can't believe that. You go into the depth of the forest and you sit there. And I don't say you meditate, but you certainly just sit there and keep quiet, and you wait for something to happen, and suddenly you'll hear thud, and you'll hear you look round, and obviously the forest floor is laden with stones, sort of polished pebbles, off because it's not far from the coast, and you look around with your torch and you'll pick something up, and you might be lucky. It might be hot enough it's so hot you can just about pick it up. Where does all that heat come from? And that is the stone.
And there's a hot stone.
Hot stone, yeah. But of course, going on to stones reminds me of the Washwood Heath, Birmingham, Thornhill Road, in I think it was the 1980s, where these 3 houses were being pelted with stones. The media was really excited about this, and you've got the people living in the house had steel helmets on. It was as bad as that, in case they got hit on the head with these stones. They were round, polished pebbles. The army staked it out for 2 years, and some of the stones that they marked and put on the ground, like number 6 stone, that stone would just suddenly jump up in the air and fall back down again. And it was written off as hooligans, but it certainly wasn't that. But when I went to see the lady in the middle house, that must have been 12, 15 years ago, she told me something very interesting. She said that she showed me the back garden, and in the back garden there was a path, and the path was they'd been interfering with the path. They wanted to change the shape of the path or something, but the path was made of gravestones.
Really?
And I think, and I am convinced from some of the reports I've had, if you interfere with things like gravestones, and you interfere with, like, even I've come across people that have found burial urns, take them back home, and it starts, and I'm pretty sure that there is an association or connection between what was happening and that's as far as I could take it. But you'd probably go along those lines.
Yeah. Obviously there's some kind of energy poured into them. It just takes me to a little story that I completely forgot about and never written about. And a lady from Flamborough contacted me. It involves a stone. As a little girl, and she was elderly when she contacted me, and she told me that she went into her father's greenhouse as a little girl and observed a stone spinning, like just spinning on its own kind of axis. And she looked at the stone and watched it, and not a UFO, John, not some kind of cryptid or a big cat or a ghost, but that memory had stayed with her all those years, and it was strong enough for her to contact me in later years and tell me about it. And quite an interesting little story. I did say to her, I said, did you keep the stone? Said she never did. Just a little girl remembers seeing it just spinning by itself on her own in the greenhouse, the stone. But I want to pull you back to the stones in the forest, just briefly. And did you handle any of them, John?
Oh yes, I've got photographs of them.
And well, it's probably a stupid question, because I know you've not got an answer, because we've both said it. We haven't got an answer to it. But what are your views? Because we're in middle of, we're not, but you were in the middle of Rendlesham Forest. There's nothing that could possibly heat a stone up. There's nobody about that's going to throw one in there. I'll just warm this one up and throw it for John and Brenda and her friends to look at, and it drops outside here. And you're picking it up. What's happening? Do you think that's? Do you think that the Rendlesham Forest incident, 1980, is just one small part of a massive amount of unexplained phenomena that's happening in that area?
I would say so, but as far as the stones are concerned, I mean, as they call them apports, and there's even another name for them. But if you go onto the internet and look at apports, there's been a number of apports over the years in this country and also abroad. In America, where these stones have fell heavily over people's houses for some time, and also you've got ghostly images, and you've got things, and you've got voices, and you've got all this sort of stuff, manifestations. So I don't know what the stones. I don't know what the part played by the stones is, but a lot of people would automatically say that it's poltergeist action. Now, that somebody's upset and they're wanging stones. But again, where's the evidence? The evidence is that I've seen them happen. That for me, there's no earthly explanation of how a stone can heat itself up. I've mentioned this to some people in the past, and somebody even suggested it's a blackbird, or it dropped it from its nest, or that these things have come from outer space, which actually is bullshit, because I'm sorry, you can't say that on your program, can you?
I don't think that's going to crucify us, that one, John.
Oh, that's right. No, the stones are coming at an angle, they're not coming direct from the sky. I mean, if a stone that fitted in your hand fell from the sky, I'm sure if it fell on your head, all those thousands of feet, I'm sure it would probably kill you.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Did anybody get hit by these projectiles?
Well, I got hit. I got hit on the back because I was with a group of people, Brenda and co, and I was the first one to get up. And as I got up, something struck me on the back, and it wasn't a round polished pebble, as the same as in Birmingham, and the same in other parts of the world. It was like a piece of flint, a piece of white flint. So, and that's the thing. Sorry, because so important. There's so much. I knew a lady. She was a scientist, but she still is. But she got the stone. She got a control stone, which is the one, a normal stone in the forest, and compared it with a stone, one of the apports, shall we say, yeah. When she was able to say that although they looked identical to the eye, the control one was, if you can imagine, it'd been there for millions of years. It got fissures, marks, you could see bits of dirt on it. The apport stone was identical but scrupulously clean. It's as if it had just been, it's as if it had just been made
as a copy.
Yeah, and that's a scientific, that I've got photographs of got the images somewhere, and so that is just okay. It doesn't really take you anywhere, but it's intriguing, isn't it?
It really is, John. And just to stay with Brenda Butler for a moment, because you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but did Brenda say that she was walking at some point and saw periscope type objects come up from the ground and look around?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do remember that Brenda used to. Oh, I think Brenda used to clean at a house around, I think, at Port Ness. Or was it Aldborough? It'll come to me in a minute, but it might have been Aldborough.
John, the reason I ask this, and I think that I have heard this, is because I was and am friends with a former lighthouse keeper from Flamborough who worked at Orford Ness. And he used to get escorted to the lighthouse, which is close to Rendlesham Forest, as you know.
Yeah.
And they were taken by military personnel and taken back by military personnel after their shift ended, but they weren't supposed to go on the beach and around it. And this guy did, and it kind of struck in my mind. I mean, they went out one day and looked, and there was a protrusion that came up, and they looked down it, and it was obviously some type of camera. And I wouldn't say immediately, that'd be ridiculous, but a short time later, military personnel apprehended them. Do you know? So what I'm saying is, unless I'm wrong, because I've heard this somewhere, and I might contact Brenda tomorrow or Bernie just to check whether I'm right and speak about it on a live stream next week or so. Unless I'm wrong, that this kind of backs up what she was saying. Do you know? Do you know? So there's some truth in what Brenda was saying. So let's jump from Rendlesham for a moment, then, and we'll just get to Les and see if he's got any questions for us, if that's okay. John, are you still okay with this? Are you good?
Well, I haven't seen him do this yet, but
yeah. Well, don't make me laugh again, because you threw me off. But...
Right then, guys. Yeah, it's, as I say, great show up to now, and some really good stuff coming out from the people on the chat that got some really good questions. So I'll move on.
If there's one for John, Les, if there's one for John, I'm going to leave for 2 minutes.
If there's one for John,
you're not going for a bloody drink, are you?
No, but I'm going.
Yeah, he's going to look for. He's going to look for some. He's looking for some shiny stones. There, John.
Yeah. Right, so go on. Fire the question.
Yeah. All right then, John. Have you seen a UFO yourself? I know you touched on the light orbs that you'd said you'd seen yourself in the forest. Have you seen a UFO yourself, John?
Yes, I've seen one in the forest, December the 27th, 2000. I was with Brenda and I'm trying to think who else was with us. It wasn't Bernie. Anyway, there's a lady from, it was Gina, and there was others. So she comes from Clacton, I think. Anyway, we were in the forest. It was very cold. and we saw this light appear in the sky, and I was able to film it as it came closer. It was over the Capel Green area, but probably a bit more further out towards the coast. And it was a platform of light circling, and it was one of the strangest things I'd ever seen. And I mean, it's on the internet. Somebody contacted the local newspaper, and they came along, interviewed me for about half an hour, and then put about 3 words on, and just forgot all about it. And then, funny enough, back in Worcestershire, I had a couple of reports from some girls of UFOs seen not too far away, and about a week later, I'd been to the local college, and I'll never forget. God Almighty, I didn't know much about UFOs. I was lecturing to people about Tony Dodd case, about Kalahari, I think, South Africa, where the alien was seen. I was talking to these people there, and after I left, I had a quick pint at the local pub, took my video camera with me, and went home. And I can remember just about to get into bed. My then wife was on night duty somewhere, so I was on my own, and I looked out of the window, and I saw this blob of light hovering outside the window. So I shouted out to my son. He saw it, and then I don't remember any more till the next day. I didn't even remember it till the next day. It was only when I had a cup of tea 24 hours later, I thought, where's my camera? Where's my video camera gone? I thought, surely I never left that at the college. So I phoned up the college. They hadn't got it. I phoned up my friends I'd been with. They hadn't got it. And I went upstairs, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I knew where it was. It was under the bed. I took it out, and then I looked at the film, and it was exactly as I'd forgotten. And it was this blob moving about and outside the window. And I managed to track down 2 or 3 people that had seen a similar object half an hour later over the other side of Birmingham. And you make what you can of it, because I can't work it out. That when you talk to people who had missing time, and but I don't want to go there. No, that's what happened. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, can I just add to that? A question from yourself, really, John, is when you had this 2 encounters, how did you feel inside? Did you have a tingling feeling inside of electricity, or did you have a change in how you felt?
Not at all. No. No, I think that possibly where we're lucky, Paul, is because you've had so much involvement in UFOs. You tend to take it in your stride. You've had things happen to you, Paul.
I have, yeah.
You just take it in your stride. It's sort of part of the territory, isn't it?
You kind of take it in your stride, John, and at the risk of you turning your camera off, and I don't want you to do it, to say anything you don't want to, but you said something quite profound there. You've interviewed all these people, and I know how sincere and genuine you are, but you're talking about something there, and then you went, I don't want to go there. I just don't. And
well, I don't, because I was embarrassed about it. People used to say, "Oh, well, have you ever had an experience yourself?" And I would say, "Oh, no, I've never seen anything." I was embarrassed because I couldn't deal with it.
After all these years, John, this tells me that something else happened. It doesn't mean,
undoubtedly. Yeah.
John, will you undergo regression? That don't mean that. That's not what I'm meaning. No. That's not going to happen. I'm pretty sure, because I think as such a searching soul as you are, you'd have looked for it by now. So that's not going to happen. But it tells me how deep it must be for you to just sit there with. You've told us about all the cases you've looked into. You've talked to one of the most prominent people who've witnessed UFO encounter, the Rendlesham Forest incident, Colonel Halt. You've gone through all this, and you've just told us your own encounter and gone, I don't want to go there. And
Well, you know something, it's a bit like being, I'm not joking here, it's a bit like being Alcoholics Anonymous. Not that both of us go to such a group, and fair play to people that do.
not that I'm drinking a glass of
But it's
wine.
like me, yeah, it's like you and me saying, well, yeah, we've got an alcohol problem. And yeah, you're right. There's not much I can't deal with, but you're quite right. It's not that easy to talk about it.
It's
So I
put you on the
suppose
spot. That
it has. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we can move from it, but it's an interesting perspective that and comment that you came out with. I think it just speaks volumes, because if you did want to go there, which you don't, you could have capitalized on it, and it just shows that you're not in it. You're in it for the right reasons. That's what I'm saying, because you've had. It sounds to me like you've had quite a profound experience, and you won't talk about it.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Trying to disseminate, or trying to work out is better to walk away from it, which is what I did. Why did it completely slip from my mind? My exact words when on the film were what I said when I looked out and saw it and started filming it was, "This is taking the piss." That's what I said, and it's on the film. And but people used to ask, but I would squirm inside, because uh, I understand what happens to people when they do have these experiences. Very close experiences, close encounters. Yeah.
Loads of respect for you, John, for even trying to deal with that. Les, let's move to another question.
Yeah, I'm just going back up a little bit. I did
Thank
miss
you.
a question out. Yeah, thanks for that reply, John. Tony Worrell is asking, would like to hear if John has any Royal Observer Corps sightings from World War II.
ROC. I might have one or two. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember offhand. But yeah, I think I have one or two. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of pilot sightings. Something else I've thought about, this is really weird, is that, we get the RAF, of course, they're in the sky, they see these things. We occasionally get army officers or guys on the ground. But it's really odd that we get very few. If you wanted to write a book, Paul, about Royal Naval officers or
I knew you were
Navy
going to say
men,
that. Yeah, yeah.
it'd be bugger all, wouldn't it? Really?
It would, but I'm sure that these sightings, these reports are there. I'm sure they are.
They
John.
are, but where do they go to? Because there's how often you don't see much on the MO. You don't see any declassified stuff about
No,
guys on ships, do you?
no. But there's somewhere we need to go when you've got these police books out at way. There's a joint venture. But seriously, there's a joint venture. That would be an interesting one.
Ships in the night.
So yeah, ships in the night. Yeah, there's your title. We've done it.
Your pictures, Les, is the pictures really fading on Paul.
I'm not in a position to alter the internet strength.
No, I didn't know whether it was your natural energies.
I don't think it is. I think it's just our naturally bad internet connection. So I'm sorry, people.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the one of the 3-letter agencies, John.
No, I think we'll blame it on internet. But,
yeah. I've got another question if I can fit this one in.
Please do.
Yeah. Teresa Walker is asking, was the stealth bomber influenced from off-world technology?
Who could say? It's an incredible piece of kit at the end of the day, but who could say? I mean, we look at that and we hear the sound that it makes and everything, and it still doesn't sound like anything that we hear about when we hear about true UFO reports. I've got a report, I've got a report from Bartondale Farm at Hummonby, and the people that viewed the object directly above them, just above the rooftops, of a huge boomerang-shaped object.
Yeah.
A bit animated there, guys. And they're looking up at it. They'd already had reports of it earlier in the evening and seen it going into the distance when the son told dad and mum, go out and look, there's something over the top of the farm. They go out for a cigarette later in the evening, it's over the top of them, totally silent. That's not a stealth bomber. This is stationary, monstrously huge, and go on, John.
Sorry, Paul. I was just going to say, and the majority, especially the stuff in the 1990s, the black triangles, because triangles is a bad word. You know, it's human conception. It's how we categorize them when we can't, like flying saucers, triangles. I've got reports of square blocks moving over rectangular blocks. I mean, so maybe it's to do with the position that we see them.
Yeah.
Maybe they've all got these attributes, but the ones in the 1990s, you know, they were massive and they flew over very low and doing about 30 miles an hour. If that.
Silent.
And the thing that size, that weight, couldn't fly over that slow silently if it was manufactured by human hands, surely. And if it crashed, you know.
I know we don't know, John, but I would agree with what you're saying. You know, based on what we know about science, and I'm not a scientist, as everybody knows, not nails in wood. But the point is, we know that thing couldn't possibly suspend itself in the air silently. Yeah. It's just incredibly. It's just not beyond. It's beyond us. Les.
Yes. Patricia Adams writes, and I've got to say at this point, thanks for all the support tonight on the chat and the questions and the super chat that we've had in tonight.
I can see all these people in chat, you know, and I do apologise, Les, John, and the people in the chat for not being able to say everybody, but I can see MKMD, Dean Cooling, Teresa Walker, Alex, Kez, Blue Shift. You know, we get some incredible support, and it's brilliant. And just to be able to listen to John talk about all these historic things, and the new stuff is amazing. And thanks for support, guys. Really appreciate it. Les,
I'd like to reiterate that, because the fact that people take their time to come along and listen is important. And you know, we can all learn from each other here.
This is true, John. But what you've got to say, John, is as important as what anybody else has to say. And the books, it's good that we've managed to brings to some people. Not people will have already known about Haunted Skies and the publications, but we've actually there's a captive audience here. These people are listening to us, and we consider them as friends. And they're going to look at the Haunted Skies books, and the amount of work that you've done. It's far beyond anything that I've done. It's absolutely immense. It's brilliant, John. It's great to be able to let your voice.
It's a way of life, and I'm fully convinced that as you get older, I retired from the force 27 years ago, and instead of spending my time digging up bottles, and there were some interesting bottles from Victorian tips, none filled with any beer, but sorry.
No, did you get some of those with the marbles in them? I'll do it like that this time.
Well, you remember those as well. But what I'm saying, and to the people out there, is because nobody gets any younger, and the important thing in life, says he, hopefully, is to have an interest, and use your brain, because if you don't use your brain, things can happen. And that's what I do. But I was thinking this morning when I got up that if we could go through if we could look through those archives, I reckon I worked out that we could, if you were prepared to do this for the next 20 years, we'd probably get to the end. You know, the only trouble is that we haven't got. I mean, what I'm saying, we couldn't do it for 20 years because we get bored as hell. But that's the problem, you see. But the only way I can get this stuff out is through books, same as yourself.
And there's not enough time, John, for the amount of knowledge that you've collated. You know, there's stuff happened in '85. There's stuff happened in all these years, and the Haunted Skies volumes. If you did a year for every volume in your lifetime, you'd never get through it. And I know I wouldn't. If I were doing it, we just couldn't. There's not. None of us have enough time. So other people have to pick up the mantle and carry on.
You know, the worst thing about that, everybody out there, is I started this in '95 with the police officer sighting, and so that's probably why I accrued so much stuff. But here's the bad news. It's 2022. I have only got up to 1994.
That's what I'm going.
I have only got up to 1994. And I haven't got around to doing the next book. I mean, I did the revised books. The revised books 1, 2, 3, and 4 were brilliant because they're in color and they're thorough. And I'm not trying to sell a commodity here. What I'm saying is I've worked hard. I've put a lot into these books. And again, these books are not about me. These books are about people. And if I can preserve their stories and encounter, the same as you, Paul, that is as much we could do, because books are important. There was a time not so many years ago we thought books would be out, would be all about the internet. But unfortunately, I have to say I don't spend a lot of time on the internet. I've learnt my lesson there, because the books teach you. There's so many experts on the internet and on UFO sites, and I think nothing more annoys me than seeing a blob of light in the sky, which attracts hundreds of comments about which spaceship it is and where it's from. And sadly, of course, you just don't know.
Exactly. Do you know, John? We're fast approaching 2 hours here, and I've really enjoyed your.
It seems like only 10 minutes.
It does, but I'm going to ask Les if any more questions that we can provoke anything from John. And
yeah, sure. Yeah,
thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And I've got to endorse what Paul is saying about your books and your archive and all the history that you've collected. And I'm amazed that you've only got up to, was it 1994?
Yeah. I wanted to do 98.
I think that's about right. Yeah.
So I've got,
ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've got a question from Patricia Adams Wright. It's a good question. Before you is an open door leading into a UFO. Hypothetical question is this, guys. Would you two gents enter, or do you turn around and walk away?
Well, Paul knows the answer to that.
Well, I know that I would enter. I know I would.
Of course I would, because
and it's not a foolhardy question, guys, because I realise that it might not end good. But yeah, I would. The inquiring mind I've got to do. I can't shove all this out. John can't shove all this out and collect all this wealth of information and not potentially, hypothetically, make that step. I would have to, and I think, well, I can't speak for you, John. But
yeah, it's I've come across so many reports where people have had the opportunity, but for obvious reasons, I've chosen not to go into the object. You're talking about an object that's on the ground, and what appears to be a door opens, because that's the only way we can describe a door opens, which means that access could be gained. I have the feeling that if access is gained, if we went into that object, we would never see this earth again.
Okay,
so that's as bad as it is. But yeah, it's well, the only thing is, Les, if we both disappear tonight, but it's I know I joke and I laugh because you've got to have a sense of humor. If you didn't have a sense of humor in this business, but it's something of great concern. It should be to all of us, and yet the government's attitude towards it is complete. It's flippancy, isn't it?
It's dismissive, and don't Pat ask brilliant questions. And that
well, I was just wondering about that lady. Yeah, the name's come up quite a few
Yeah,
times. Yeah,
absolutely wonderful lady, and I'll tell you what, we're so grateful for support that we get within the chat, private messages. It's brilliant, John, and we're lucky. And I hope that you decide that you might want to come back and give us another 2 hours. Don't throw me off.
I'd love to, but hello, you're doing that with your hands again.
No, you threw me off course a little bit doing that.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying
it's all good. So we'll let's end on this note, unless tell people where.
Well, I was just going to quickly say, if Patricia or anybody else, I can be contacted. That you've got my email details. Please contact me, and I can send them some bits and bobs. I mean, I'm just looking at April the 1st, 1948, Turtleback UFO sighted by pilot. And this is one of the Project Blue Book cases, and it was a turtle-backed object with a dorsal fin. Shape of the object was a half moon. The pilot gave chase, but the problem is, as Alan Hynek once said, we are too rich in imagery, and we have so many, probably millions of sightings. A lot of them, of course, have been forgotten, and that's the problem. I mean, we can only do our best to try and keep the subject in the public domain, as it were.
Document and preserve the history of it. And you, John,
yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And thanks to the people that have come on the chat, because they're the supporters. And I mean, that's what it's about. Because if we haven't got any people that come on the chat line, if we haven't got people that are interested, well, we certainly don't want to lose this, do we?
No. We're not going to lose it. We'll never lose it, John. We've got people.
And I come in for no other reason than we're short of time. Right. Thank you, guys. It's been a privilege and an honour from my point of view, John, to actually see and talk to you. And I will now be in the process of buying some of your books, no doubt. And I've got to say, for everybody out there, if they want to consider buying John's books, then don't let me stop you. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, if they want, I can put them in the new books. Well, any contributions, any help will be appreciated, as you know.
Thank you, John.
And I'm not going to do this, Paul. I'm not going to do that.
I'm just So
thanks so much, anyway.
Yeah. And I've just got to read this one out, or part of it, because it's a pat on the back for Truth Proof live stream. Aldo Rain is saying, congratulations on how you've developed the Truth Proof live stream, Les. I'm sorry, Paul, he just mentions Les.
No, that's fine.
You've come a million miles. You've come a million miles since you first started, and the show is very polished and smooth. Good job, sir. Well, there we go. You can't end better than that. On that note, I've got to leave you two guys. Thanks, John Hanson and Paul Sinclair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Sir Les.
Yeah, and right, there we go then. Another great show. Great guest, and as I say, very privileged to have Paul and John on the show tonight. Next week, we'll have another guest, and I'm sure you won't be able to wait until next week, I know. But you'll have to wait 7 more days, folks. 7 more days. In the meantime, don't forget to tune into Chris Turner's new show. I think it's running bi-weekly, so that's every 2 weeks, I think, in my book. And it was a great show last night, so a big plug for Chris Turner Films. It was a great show. But if you want more of us, join us next Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time. See you guys.